Menace II Society, 1993 versus 2025. Cast then and now. In 1993, Menace II Society didn't just shake cinema. It exposed a truth America couldn't unsee. But here's what most people never talk about: the real-life paths of the cast turned out to be just as intense and in some cases even more tragic than anything on screen. By 2025, some climbed to legend status, some fought battles far from the spotlight, and others didn't make it to see this era at all. Stay with me, because the then and now you're about to hear hits different. And if you value stories like these, hit subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence and drop your thoughts below. Tyrin Turnera. Tyrin Turner is forever linked to the eyes of Kane Lawson, the young man at the center of Menace II Society, who looked like he was already tired of the world at 19. When the film arrived in 1993, Turner was essentially brand new to movie audiences, yet he carried the story with a quiet intensity that felt documentary real. The performance earned him an Independent Spirit Award nomination and instant recognition as one of the most promising faces of that era. What followed, though, wasn't the neat Hollywood fairy tale people expected. The early 90s were crowded with fresh talent, and Turner found himself fighting a different battle: how to move forward after a role so defining that it threatened to swallow everything else. He took solid parts in films such as Panther and later Belly-made television appearances and kept showing up, but the industry's spotlight drifted elsewhere. Away from the camera, he dealt with personal upheaval that included a painful breakup and a long, draining custody struggle, the kind of private turbulence that can make any career feel like it's running uphill. Have you ever watched a breakout star and wondered why the world stopped calling their name? Even when you knew the talent was real, instead of disappearing, Turner reshaped his path. For years, he worked behind the scenes writing comedy material for close friends in the business, notably Jamie Foxx and comedian Affion Crockett, staying creative even when leading roles were scarce. That quieter lane kept him inside the heartbeat of entertainment and expanded his skill set beyond acting. He also stepped into producing earning credits on television projects, including Alert Missing Persons Unit, showing that his voice could guide stories as well as perform them. By 2025, Turner is about 53 and still active. He has continued taking screen roles while also leaning into live performance, launching a national tour with the off-Broadway stage production Jason's Lyric Live in early 2025. It's a fitting full-circle moment. A man who helped define one landmark of Black cinema, now helping revive another for a new generation. At home, he's a father to fraternal twins and keeps his family life mostly out of the glare, choosing stability over spectacle. Tyrin Turner's then and now story isn't about flashing fame, it's about endurance. He may not have lived in the headlines, but he kept building, adapting, and staying present. And sometimes, that steady survival is the most honest kind of legacy. Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson's appearance in Menace II Society 1993 was brief, but it landed like a thunderclap. At 44, he played Tat Lawson Kane's volatile father, bringing a flash of menace and chaos that helped set the film's emotional temperature. By that point, Jackson had already paid his dues in theater and supporting film roles, yet 1993 was still the edge of his breakout. The next year, Pulp Fiction would turn him into a household name, but Menace II Society captured him right before superstardom, when his talent felt dangerous, hungry, and unpredictable. Off-screen, those years were not polished or easy. Jackson has spoken openly about struggling with alcohol and cocaine addiction in the late 1980s and early 1990s. A rehab stay in New York became a turning point not just for his health, but for his career discipline. He has often described recovery as the moment he decided to live long enough to see what his gifts could become. That choice reshaped everything: his marriage, his work ethic, and the kind of legacy he wanted to leave. From there, Jackson's climb became one of the most staggering runs in modern film history. He built an unmatched resume across genres: Spike Lee dramas, Tarantino classics, thrillers, action franchises, and voice work while becoming the face of global blockbusters as Nick Fury in the Marvel Universe and Mace Windu in Star Wars. His films have collectively earned over $27 billion worldwide, a record that places him among the highest-grossing actors ever. That success didn't come from one lucky break, but from consistency, showing up prepared, saying yes to bold scripts, and never shrinking from risk. In 2025, Jackson is 76 and remains active, choosing projects that fit his energy and curiosity. He has been married to LaTanya Richardson since 1980, and their partnership, rooted in shared craft and hard-earned stability, stands as one of Hollywood's quieter, long marriages. Together, they've supported charitable efforts, especially around education and the arts. Financially, his net worth is widely estimated around $250 million, reflecting decades of leading roles, franchise deals, and steady output. So Then and Now for Samuel L. Jackson isn't a story of fading after a classic. It's a story of ignition, how a man who once wrestled with self-destruction became a symbol of longevity, reinvention, and the power of choosing your next day. Larenz Tate. Larenz Tate entered Menace II Society as a teenager and left it as a permanent symbol of 90s urgency. Born September 8, 1975 in Chicago, he was roughly 17 during production and only 18 when audiences first saw him as Kevin O-Dog Anderson in 1993. That youth matters. O-Dog's fuse short terror felt frighteningly authentic because it was played by someone still close to the age of the character. In a film packed with pain and consequence, Tate's performance was the match that kept lighting the screen, unpredictable, magnetic, and impossible to look away from. But a role that big can be a doorway and a trap at the same time. After Menace, Tate refused to live inside one image. He pivoted quickly into varied parts, the wounded soldier Anthony Curtis in Dead Presidents 1995, the sensitive poet Darius Lovehall in Love Jones 1997, and later real-life figures like Frankie Lyman in Why Do Fools Fall in Love 1998. Those choices weren't accidental. They were a quiet statement that he could hold romance, intelligence, vulnerability, and authority, not just menace. When you think back on the young actors who scared you most on screen, how many of them grew into artists with real range? Through the 2000s and 2010s, Tate stayed visible without chasing noise. He appeared in critically recognized ensembles such as Crash 2004 played Quincy Jones in Ray 2004 and kept a steady presence on television. A new wave of fans met him as Rashad Tate in the Power universe, a role that let him age into sharp suits, political ambition, and moral complexity. That character ran from the original Power series into Power Book 2 Ghost, completing its arc in 2024, proof that Tate could command long-form storytelling as convincingly as he once dominated a single explosive scene. Off-camera, he built a grounded personal life. He's been married to Thomasina Parrott since 2006, and they share 4 children. He's also used his platform for advocacy, serving as a national spokesperson for sickle cell disease awareness work that reflects an adult sense of responsibility after portraying a youth who had none. Financial estimates for Tate vary by outlet, but most place his 2025 net worth somewhere in the low to mid single-digit millions, the result of decades of consistent screen work and producing. Looking ahead, he's been announced to portray Motown executive Berry Gordy in the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic, Michael, currently slated for 2026. From a volatile kid in 1993 to a seasoned performer in 2025, Larenz Tate's story is less about escaping a shadow and more about widening the light. Arnold Johnson. Arnold Johnson brought a lifetime of hard-earned gravity to Menace II Society. When he appeared as Thomas Lawson Kane's grandfather and the story's steady conscience, he wasn't playing a stereotype or a simple wise elder. He felt like a real man who had seen too much, loved too much, and was scared of losing the last thing that mattered. Born on November 15, 1921 in Brooklyn, New York. Johnson was in his early 70s when the film was made, and that age showed up in every pause, every tired breath, every look that said, "I'm running out of ways to save you." In a movie roaring with youth and violence, his presence was the quiet heartbeat. Johnson's career stretched across some of the most important decades in American film and television. Long before Menace, he became a landmark figure in black cinema by starring in the late 1960s satire Putney Swope, a role that placed a black man in charge of a white advertising world and let the comedy cut like a razor. Through the 1970s, he worked steadily in major films, including Shaft and Rocky, and his face became familiar in living rooms thanks to guest work on classic sitcoms. He rarely got top billing, but he had that rare gift of making even a few minutes feel like a whole story. Directors used him when they wanted authenticity without showboating. By the early 1990s, Hollywood had fewer roles for men his age, especially black actors who weren't boxed into comedy or caricature. Yet Johnson kept working, choosing parts that carried dignity. That's why his turn as Grandpa Thomas resonates. He wasn't there to fix the plot. He was there to represent a generation that survived the streets long enough to be heartbroken by what the streets were doing to their children. Arnold Johnson passed away on April 10, 2000 in Los Angeles at 78 years old. His death marked the close of a life spent threading through eras that didn't always make room for him, yet never managed to erase him either. Looking back from 2025, his then and now isn't a tale of reinvention or public drama. It's a portrait of endurance. He arrived in Menace II Society as the film's moral center, and he left behind a body of work that still feels honest, grounded, and quietly monumental. Cypher. Reggie Gibson, known to hip-hop heads as Cypher, and to movie fans as Kane's cousin Harold Lawson, walked into Menace II Society in 1993 with the same wiry intensity that powered his music. In the film, Harold's fate arrives fast and brutal, a gut check that tells you nobody in this world is safe. Cypher was only 23 when he shot that role, and even with limited screen time, he made Harold feel like a real young man from the block, confident 1 minute gone the next. That blink and you miss it impact mirrored his presence in rap, quick, sharp, and unforgettable. Before most of America learned his face, Cypher had already built a reputation in Oakland's underground scene. He helped form Hobo Junction, later joined Digital Underground, and became famous for a breathless, acrobatic flow that could turn a verse into a high-wire act. His debut album, Boxcar Sessions 1994, is still treated as a Bay Area classic, followed by Trigonometry 1998, The Hit List 1999, and later projects that kept his cult following alive, even when mainstream radio wasn't calling. He also linked with Zibit and Ross Cass in the Golden State Project, showing he could spar lyrically with any heavyweight in the West. Have you ever watched a gifted artist fight through pain so long that the fight itself becomes part of what you remember most? That question fits, because Cypher's adult life became a long test of the body. On July 30, 1992, he survived the TWA Flight 843 accident, injuring his back while escaping the burning plane. The damage never truly let go. Years later, spinal complications, including surgery for a tumor, began closing doors that talent alone couldn't reopen. By the early 2010s, he was using a wheelchair not as a symbol of defeat, but as a reality he learned to live inside while continuing to create when he could. Cypher died in Oakland on November 19, 2024, at 54. The confirmed causes were sepsis, septic shock, and enterocolitis with an infected pressure sore contributing. Friends and collaborators, especially Zibit, publicly mourned him and his son. The rapper Lil Cypher honored him as both father and blueprint. Looked at from 2025, Cypher's life is a reminder that some artists burn bright in one lane, then fight quietly in another. The film captured his spark. The years showed his grit. Charles S. Dutton. Charles S. Dutton's path to Menace II Society is one of the most unlikely in American acting. Born January 30, 1951, on the east side of Baltimore, he grew up in public housing surrounded by street fights, poverty, and a constant sense that tomorrow was never promised. As a teenager, he drifted into violence and crime. At 17, he was convicted of manslaughter and sent to prison. Later arrests added more time, and a clash with a guard extended his sentence even further. By his own account, he spent close to a decade behind bars. It's the kind of backstory that usually ends in silence, except Dutton found something in prison that changed everything theater. During solitary confinement, he picked up a book of black playwrights, and the words grabbed him hard. He started a drama group, earned his GED, and when he got out, he refused to go back to the old life. He studied seriously, first community college, then Towson University, and finally Yale School of Drama, where he earned an MFA in 1983. Not long after he hit Broadway in August, Wilson's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, earning a Tony nomination. That foundation helped him move into film and television with a sense of authority you can't fake. By 1993, when he played Mr. Butler in Menace II Society, he wasn't acting a mentor figure from imagination. He was drawing on scars, discipline, and the memory of consequences. After Menace, Dutton became a familiar, trusted presence, the hard-edged but humane coach in Rudy, the steady hand in Alien 3, the sheriff in A Time to Kill. On TV, he led the groundbreaking sitcom drama Rock 1991-1994, winning multiple NOACP Image Awards and Emmy recognition. He later directed the acclaimed miniseries The Corner in 2000, a Baltimore story close to his bones, and won an Emmy for that work. Across the 2000s, he kept shifting between acting and directing, often choosing parts that explored justice, survival, and redemption. By 2025, Dutton is 74. He has worked more selectively in recent years, but his reputation remains granite solid, an artist who built a second life through craft and willpower. Estimates of his net worth generally sit around $4 million, reflecting a long-respected run, rather than flashy blockbuster paydays. Then and Now for Charles S. Dutton isn't about fame rising or falling, it's about a man who rewrote his story and proved that change can be real hard and lasting. Bill Duke. Bill Duke's presence in Menace II Society is a masterclass in how to own a scene without crowding it. In 1993, he played the detective who interrogates the boys after the convenience store killing. It's not a long stretch of screen time, but it's unforgettable because Duke makes authority feel clinical, not theatrical. At around 50 years old when the film came out, he carried the kind of hard calm that suggests a man who has walked into rooms like that for decades and knows exactly how fear works. Born on February 26, 1943 in Poughkeepsie, New York, Duke first came up through theater before breaking into film and television. Many viewers met him in the 1980s through big studio action pictures. He appeared in Commando 1985 and became instantly recognizable to a generation as Mac in Predator 1987, where his physical size was matched by a steady human warmth. What separated Duke from a lot of imposing actors was that he never relied only on stature. He always let intelligence leak through the performance, even in roles built on toughness. When you re-watch that interrogation scene today, isn't it the quiet control more than any threat that makes your stomach tighten? Behind the camera. Duke quietly carved out a second identity that may matter even more. He became part of the first wave of black directors to work consistently in mainstream American television, guiding episodes of major series in the late 80s and early 90s. He then moved into feature directing with stories that confronted power, race, and survival head-on. Deep Cover 1992 arrived just before Menace II Society and remains one of the era's sharpest crime dramas. Later, Hoodlum 1997 and other projects confirmed that he wasn't dabbling, he was building a body of work with a point of view. Duke has also invested heavily in mentorship. Through his Duke Media Foundation and years of teaching and workshops, he's helped train younger filmmakers, especially those who might not have had a clear door into the industry. That commitment fits the arc of his life, a working artist who understood that representation isn't only about who is on screen, but who gets to shape the stories. By 2025, Duke is in his early 80s. He continues to act selectively direct when the right material comes along and speak publicly about widening opportunity in Hollywood. His journey from commanding actor to purposeful filmmaker shows a rare kind of longevity, one built on craft conscience, and the refusal to be boxed into a single lane. Glenn Plummer. Glenn Plummer has always been one of those actors you recognize instantly, even if you don't always know his name. In Menace II Society, 1993, he played Purnell, a close friend, whose choices reflect the film's constant tension between loyalty and self-destruction. Plummer wasn't a flashy centerpiece in the story, but he gave Purnell a quiet, lived-in realism, like a man already carrying regrets he couldn't quite say out loud. That grounded energy helped the movie feel less like a scripted drama and more like a slice of real neighborhood life. Born on August 18, 1961 in Richmond, California, Plummer came up during a period when black actors were still fighting for varied three-dimensional roles. Before Menace, he'd already built momentum with sharp supporting work in films like Colors 1988, and he broke through early as Bobby Badass Johnson in South Central 1992, a role that proved he could lead a film with both toughness and vulnerability. By the time audiences met him as Purnell, he was firmly part of the new wave of early 90s black cinema actors who made the streets, the pressure, and the heartbreak feel painfully close. After 1993, Plummer's career became a long, steady run through some of the most recognizable films and series of the last 3 decades. He popped up in Speed 1994, Showgirls 1995, The Salton Sea 2002, The Day After Tomorrow 2004, and Saw 2 2005, moving between crime, drama, big studio thrillers, and cult favorites without ever losing his sense of authenticity. On television, he kept proving his range with appearances on E.R. Bones' Dexter and later as Vic Trammell on Sons of Anarchy. What's striking is how often directors lean on him for characters who feel like they've actually lived through something, men with history in their eyes, even when the script only gives them a few scenes. By 2025, Plummer is 64, still working in film and TV, and has also stepped into producing and writing on smaller projects. He represents a kind of Hollywood longevity that doesn't rely on headlines, the working actor who stays in demand because he's reliable, believable, and emotionally precise. Looking back from 1993 to now, Glenn Plummer's story is not about a single breakout moment. It's about consistency, showing up decade after decade and making every role feel like a real person you might have known. Clifton Powell. Clifton Powell has long been a master of the scene steal. In Menace II Society 1993, he appears as Chauncey, a smooth-talking friend whose envy and volatility add another fuse to an already combustible story. Powell was in his mid-30s when the film was released, and he played Chauncey with a slippery charm that makes the character feel familiar, someone you might have known from the neighborhood who could laugh with you today and turn on you tomorrow. He didn't need a spotlight role to matter. His energy sharpened the film's sense of danger by showing how quickly friendship can curdle when pride gets involved. Born March 16, 1956 in Washington, D.C., Powell trained for acting with the seriousness of someone who knew talent alone wouldn't be enough. After graduating from Emerson College, he built his resume in the late 80s and early 90s, just as Black American cinema was expanding into grittier, more layered storytelling. That timing mattered. Powell arrived ready, able to slide between streetwise drama and humor without ever feeling like he was performing a type. Have you noticed how some actors don't need to be the lead to stay in your memory? After Menace II Society, Powell's career became a marathon of versatility. He worked across crime films, comedies, action pictures, and television, stacking well over 100 screen credits. One of his most praised dramatic turns came in Ray 2004, where he brought emotional precision to a supporting part in a film anchored by heavy performances. Then he flipped gears completely as Pinky in Next Friday 2000 and Friday After Next 2002, creating a comic character so vivid it became a cultural reference point for years. He also made a lasting imprint on pop culture through voice acting, most famously as Big Smoke in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas 2004, a role that introduced him to an entirely different generation of fans. What makes Powell's journey notable isn't a single peak. its durability. He kept showing up in projects that ranged from big studio releases to indie films and faith-based dramas, often portraying men who carry a mix of swagger, vulnerability, and edge. In recent years, he's remained active in television series and smaller features, choosing roles that let him keep working while staying connected to audience tastes that have changed dramatically since the early 90s. By 2025, Clifton Powell stands as one of those rare performers whose career is built on craft, not hype. His then and now story is about staying ready, staying useful, and quietly becoming part of the backbone of modern black film and TV, an actor who never needed the loudest role to make the deepest mark. Condi Alexander. Condi Alexander stepped into Menace II Society in 1993 as Karen Lawson Kane's aunt, one of those adults who seems to be holding a family together with nothing but willpower and exhausted love. Her screen time is not huge yet. Her impact is clear. She represents the fragile thread of home life in a world that keeps tearing itself apart. Alexander was about 35 when the film premiered, and the poise she brought to Karen came from a background far deeper than a single movie role. Born September 4, 1957 in Jacksonville, Florida, and raised in Queens, New York, Alexander didn't start as an actress at all. She began as a dancer trained in the disciplined world of stage movement, and that physical intelligence never left her performances. In the late 1980s, she worked as a choreographer, including Whitney Houston's world tours from 1988 to 1992, a high-pressure job that demands precision, stamina, and leadership. By the time she moved into acting, she already understood rhythm, how to enter a moment, when to hold back, and when to strike hard. After Menace, her career unfolded across film and television with remarkable variety. In the 1990s, she appeared in features like CB4, What's Love Got to Do With It?, Poetic Justice, Sugar Hill, and later, There's Something About Mary. On TV, she became a familiar presence as Catherine Duke on News Radio 1995 to 1998, bringing quick wit and warmth to a show built on timing. She followed that with a powerful run on ER as Jackie Robbins Benton's sister, where she gave viewers a character full of love, pride, and complicated edges. The 2000s and 2010s gave her some of her most acclaimed work. She led the HBO miniseries The Corner as Fran Boyd, a role that earned major critical recognition and helped define the gritty human style of prestige TV. She then spent 7 seasons on CSI Miami as Dr. Alex Woods, a character many fans still consider the emotional center of that series. Later, as LaDonna Batiste Williams on HBO's Treem, she portrayed a woman surviving grief and rebuilding life after Katrina with a quiet ferocity. And in Scandal, her turn as Maya Lewis, Olivia Pope's mother, won her an Emmy nomination in 2015 and an NAACP Image Award, proving she could still steal the air from a scene decades into her career. By 2025, Alexander is 67 to 68, working selectively respected as a performer who built her reputation through craft, not noise. Net worth figures online vary, so the honest takeaway isn't a dollar amount, it's the longevity behind it. Her then and now story is a testament to discipline, reinvention, and the rare ability to stay relevant without chasing the spotlight. MC8. MC8, born Aaron Bernard Tyler on May 22, 1971 in Compton, California, came into Menace II Society as more than a cameo rapper. In 1993, he played AWAX, the older homie who pulls the teenagers deeper into trouble with that slow, seductive street logic, "This is how things get done." 8 was about 22 during filming, and his performance worked because it didn't feel performed. He sounded like someone who'd heard those conversations 1,000 times, delivering menace without shouting the way real pressure usually arrives. Before Hollywood ever called MC8, had already carved out a voice in West Coast hip-hop as the gritty narrator of Compton's daily weather. He rose through Compton's Most Wanted, a group that helped define early 90s gangsta rap alongside NWA, but with an earthier neighborhood corner storytelling style. Their 1992 album, Music to Drive By, built a loyal following, and 8's gravel-throated delivery became the group's signature. When Menace II Society hit 8 doubled the impact by recording Straight Up Menace for the soundtrack, a track that essentially retold the film's tragedy in rhyme and became one of his most recognized songs. Did you hear 8's voice in the movie and instantly know it wasn't acting but lived experience? After the film, 8 pushed forward as a solo artist without cutting ties to his roots. Albums like We Come Strapped, 1994, Death Threats, 1996, and Last Man Standing, 1997, kept him visible during hip-hop's most crowded era. He also became part of one of rap's famous regional rivalries, his long, tense feud with DJ Quick, which fueled diss tracks and sharpened his public image as a real Compton spokesperson rather than a studio invention. Through the 2000s, he continued releasing records while shifting with the times, later returning strongly with projects like Which Way Is West, 2017, and Official Sasasher Lessons, 2020. 8 didn't leave screens behind either. In 2004, he became the voice of Ryder in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, a role that introduced him to millions of younger fans who may not have grown up on CMW tapes. In recent years, he's also co-hosted the Gangster Chronicles podcast, reflecting on street history, music, politics, and survival with a veteran's clarity. By late 2025, MC8 is 54, still recording and performing selectively, more curator than newcomer. Net worth estimates online swing widely from the high six figures into the low millions, so the safest truth is this: his value isn't just financial. It's in a career that stayed authentic to Compton's voice while learning how to live past the era that first made it famous. Vaunt Sweet. Vontae Sweet's contribution to Menace II Society is easy to underestimate until you re-watch the film. In 1993, he played Sharif Butler Kane's childhood friend who has embraced Islam and tries, sometimes gently, sometimes bluntly, to pull the people he loves away from the edge. Sharif isn't loud or flashy. He's a presence of restraint, someone who has decided that survival requires discipline, not bravado. Sweet was in his early 20s during production, and his calm seriousness gave the movie a needed counterweight to its spiral of rage. Without Sharif, the story would be only freefall. With him, we feel the painful possibility of another way. What many viewers didn't know at the time is that Sharif was originally intended for Tupac Shakur, who was dismissed early in filming after disputes with the directors. Sweet stepped into a role that already carried expectation and pressure, then made it his own less performative toughness, more moral gravity. That's not a small feat for a young actor in a film packed with bigger personalities. Sweet's on-screen career, however, didn't expand the way audiences might have predicted. He had worked before appearing in Boys in the Hood, 1991, and Predator 2, 1990, and after Menace, he continued with supporting parts in the mid to late 90s, including titles such as American Strays, 1996, Always Outnumbered, 1998, and The Walking Dead, 1995. Yet he never became a mainstream star. By the early 2000s, his credits thinned, suggesting a quiet pivot away from acting, or at least away from steady screen work. Unlike some co-stars who remained in the public eye, Sweet kept a low profile with little verified information about his private life circulating in reliable outlets. In an era that often rewards noise over substance, his invisibility feels almost intentional. As of 2025, Vontae Sweet is around 54 years old. His legacy rests largely on Sharif, a character who represents choice faith and the courage to change course even when the streets keep calling your name. For many fans, especially those who've lived long enough to see youthful mistakes echo across decades, Sharif remains the film's quiet center of conscience, and Sweet's performance keeps that center steady. Too Short. Too Short's link to Menace II Society is a reminder of how closely early 90s West Coast rap and street cinema were intertwined. In 1993, Todd Anthony Shaw, already a Bay Area rap cornerstone, showed up on screen as Lulock, one of the neighborhood figures orbiting Kane and O-Dog. It wasn't a glossy Hollywood turn, it was a natural extension of the world his music had been describing for years. Too Short didn't need to act tough. His laid-back delivery and streetwise posture felt like he walked straight out of the soundtrack and into the frame. By the time the film premiered, Too Short was 7 albums deep into a career built on Oakland grit and unfiltered storytelling. Records like Born to Mac, 1987, and Life Is Too Short, 1988, had already made him a regional legend, while Short Dogs in the House, 1990, and Get In Where You Fit, in 1993, pushed him nationwide. His voice, raw, funny, explicit, and brutally observant, helped shape the sound of West Coast hip-hop before it was a global brand. He wasn't chasing trends, he was one of the people trends chased. When you hear a Too Short track today, do you still picture the Oakland streets that first gave it its swagger after Menace II Society? He never chased a full-time acting career. In later interviews, he explained that film sets weren't where his heart lived. Music was. And music is exactly where he stayed, dropping more than 20 studio albums across 4 decades, earning multiple gold certifications, and becoming a featured presence on countless West Coast classics. His 2006 comeback hit Blow the Whistle reintroduced him to a younger wave, proving that his style could age without losing bite. Instead of trying to sound 25 forever, he leaned into being the veteran who still knows how the party moves. In the 2010s and 2020s, Too Short expanded smartly collaborations with new school artists, business ventures, podcast appearances, and selective on-camera work tied to Oakland culture. In 2025, he's 59, performing regularly, sometimes in big nostalgic lineups, sometimes in smaller hometown shows that feel like a block reunion. Recent live schedules show him booked through late 2025 and into 2026, a sign that his audience hasn't gone anywhere. Too Short's story isn't about a single movie cameo. It's about a man who turned regional truth into national music, kept ownership of his voice, and aged into a living bridge between eras, still witty, still unmistakable, still Oakland to the bone. From South Central's raw 1993 reality to the cast's lives in 2025, Menace II Society still echoes. Tyron Turner kept grinding in film and on stage. Lawrence Tate matured into a consistent actor-producer. Samuel L. Jackson turned a turbulent past into enduring stardom. Jada Pinkett Smith remained influential despite public storms. MC8 and Too Short carried West Coast hip-hop into new eras. We also lost Arnold Johnson and Safir, a reminder that fame doesn't protect anyone. Here on Legends of Black Excellence, ask yourself, did the film predict their futures too, or did we as a culture help write them?